right, just before we get started, so we need something like a block or a ball. That'd be great. We need something like a hand weight. That would be great. We will be doing something at a wall at one point, so having a wall available for you, and got wobbles to balance on, that's great. And if you don't, we'll do it without. And all of that. So, all right, looks like we got a nice group here. Welcome everyone. Glad to have you here. We'll be getting started. We'll be in a standing position. So find your way into a standing position. I am going to do the typical mute everyone so that we won't interfere with our background noise. And when you get a chance, come into a standing position. And as you stand, allow yourself a spin. Just a little bit of a twist and a turn. Back and forth. So you notice what you feel and where you feel it in your body. Loosen some things up. Make yourself aware of the areas that are not loosening up. And that can be the areas that you need to compensate and change and adapt to. But then take your arms up and let your arms come down. So this up and down movement and a little bit more of release work. So we open up our body, we make it ready for practically anything. Let those knees bend. So we start off with the feet about hip distance wide, and I want you to lift your heels up and come toward your toes enough until you lose your balance, and you probably have to step forward if you lose your balance enough. And then you'll go back onto the heels, keep your knees bent, and that's more quickly going to cause us to lose our balance. So we're going into the toes and into a crouch and back onto the heels. And it's hard to crouch when you're going backward, but it's a really good thing to do because it's going to teach your body some actual real life skills. As right now, we're just waking up the balance centers, and we're having to engage our core a little more just to stay upright. Now, we'll do the same thing, but we'll have one foot forward to the other, and we come up onto the toes far enough that the balance is lost, and then back onto those heels far enough that, again, balance just goes away. We'll go forward and back like that, just letting the body shift and lose it, and then we'll put the other foot in the forward position. So as we continuously practice these kind of balance challenging actions, we'll find that in time, our regular balance is better just because it's not that we don't lose our balance, it's that we recover so skillfully without thought. But let's change it a little bit. Let's put our feet so that they're just right next to each other. We become a little bowling pin, so it's easy to lose balance even just standing here. Come toward those toes, lift up those heels, and it's like you lose your balance, and then it's harder to regain it. That's the problem. You keep those feet close together, and balance is lost more easily, and also getting back to balance when you really have to step in. All right, and it would, of course, be more difficult if we stood on one foot and the other foot was just hanging out there, and we lifted up, and then we're even on a tiny, tiny little point, little bitty spot, and we're trying to successfully lose and recover our balance. And so the point is, it's not that we should be afraid of losing our balance, it's that we should be practicing the things that we need to do in order to recover our balance. Very good. Now, feet about hip distance, coming down. In whatever way you get down to touch the floor. Now, you can do that with knees bending, or you can do it just sort of into a bit of a forward bend as long as your back isn't straining and rounding. And so do that a couple of times, and then try it with 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. Makes you crouch a little differently, and it's a good thing to do. You could, again, just bend forward without bending those knees very much. And so, or another thing, right? So getting down and back up again, that's the goal. There's no particular way. Some people like one way better than another. And then we come back to that tiny little feet in that same little bitty span, coming down and back up, or maybe doing that as a sort of crouch kind of position. But then the challenge is to stand on one foot and to come down, lifting the other foot up. And so you got to figure that out. That's very, very easy to lose the balance with that. So maybe you're just bending forward and there's no bend of the knee, or maybe you're using this as a way to come down with that knee bending. can try it in a variety of different ways. It just really wakes us up, makes us work harder. And now we're going to stand with the feet hip distance, and we'll start to lean weight to one side enough that we'll take the other foot off, and we'll find that it can almost be a perfect counterbalance. We can sustain ourselves pretty well once we get used to it. So just a little bit of a side to side kind of movement to, again, alert the body, wake it up to many different movements that we might be making in class. And that's great. Now, let's warm up some of the body parts we're going to be using for the class. But first, just turn your arms in, let them hang down, and turn your arms out. Now, inward rotation is typical, but watch out for discomforts, especially at the end range of the movement. And outward rotation is the unusual because we don't, this is not the way we eat. We eat food by digging inward, and we throw food away. We take the arms out. We don't actually use the arms out in all that much. So let's experiment with that. Let's have one arm just across the body. The other is going to be right there. And my hand sort of is right there, just right at the elbow point. So when I rotate in and then I rotate out, my arm stays in place. All right, so I'm creating this action, inward versus outward rotation. And I'm not letting my arm journey backward and forward. It's inward versus outward. And you're going to find that the internal resistance of your own muscle structure is going to make that outward difficult. Now, it's not intended that the inward and outward be the same. Let's do side two. Once we get in position, you'll have a lot of inward, but you'll run out of outward before you get the same degree of movement. Unless, of course, you're built like those Cirque du Soleil people. So there's going to be less than a 90 degrees of outward in the normal shoulder. And then it's that external rotation. One of the things we're trying to do is to create an environment where our body is being cross-trained. So the thing that we do in life, inward, is counterbalanced with this exercise, outward. Now, I'd like us to be in a seated position, and it could be that you just sit right on the ground. If you've got a physio ball or something like that, I'll grab this one over here. You can sit on a physio ball. You don't have to sit on anything in particular, though a chair would be just fine as long as you're not going to conflict with the back of the chair, or sit on the floor. And we're going to use either a little ball, all right, something small, or a pillow. We're going to be placing it right there. And if you don't have a ball, what will work really well is a simple block. What we need is something to create some space. Now, I've got my arm right here. I don't want it sliding backward or moving forward. I want it to stay in place. I'm going to turn my palm up and have my wrist higher than my elbow. And all of this is just putting me in a position where my shoulder will respond in a very particular way. So we create an inward rotation, and it's the outward. I come out to the furthest degree, and I hold it right there where things seem to be resisting me. So we've got inward, and we've got outward with a little bit of hold. Now that's what it looks like if you're using a block. A ball or a pillow will be a little more squishy. We're going for about 10 of these. And remember, if you get ahead, that's fine. You can just do more. Just wait, twiddle your fingers or whatever. And so this action, if you run into anything that's uncomfortable, you pay close attention to that and back off. Sometimes we get too big of a dose, and it's like medicine. We don't want to have so much that we're creating discomfort. So palm up, wrist higher than elbow, and that elbow staying in track where we put it. Now, once you've done 10 on one side, then we're going to do the other side. And again, it could be that we place pillow or ball. It could be that we use something like a block. We're just wanting a gap of about 20 degrees there. And so we create an inward action. You got to get everything just right. Inward and then outward. Palm up, wrist higher than elbow. One side is not the same as the other side. You may feel that there is something significant, and a lot of it goes back to potentially an injury that could be decades old. Breathing deeply, whatever this side needs. And watch out too, sometimes your second side is your less favored side. Make sure your arm isn't trying to pull backward and fake out rotation. We're trying to keep the elbow just as it is right there on its resting place. And whatever you're using, block, I like the ball or the pillow, they're soft. The block is sort of like soft, but it's pushing me. And we really open up to this. And external rotators really do need to be trained so that we don't have a greater risk of an injury. Good. All right. Now we're going to remain seated, sitting in a chair, sitting on a physio ball, or sitting on the floor. And we're going to be creating inward rotation. Now, here's the thing. The odd thing for an arm is outward rotation. The odd thing for a hip is the opposite. It's inward rotation. I'll sit right here so you can see I placed this block right here. It could easily be a ball or a pillow. All right, that would work. We uplift, we engage the core, and inward rotation would mean that the hip turns in, but that foot moves outward. Now, I'm going to sit off the ball so that you can see a little bit better, more clearly, my feet as they move. So whatever seated position is just fine. If I happen to be sitting on the floor, I'm in a position. See my feet there. You know, there it is, inward. Now, as I'm sitting in whatever posture I'm sitting in, I want to make sure that I've got a lovely uplifted spine, that I'm not rounded, I'm uplifted. And you'll find that you don't have a lot of range of motion to move. It's going to just run out of that range of motion. Not impossible to do, but it's strangely tiresome. And the block is just holding us at about a hip distance width. So we do approximately 10 on one side, and then we do the other side. So we create the elongated spine. And all we want is that inward rotation. I'm not thinking of my foot moving, I'm thinking of my hip turning in, which just so happens to create the foot moving out. And so there could be quite a difference. And if you begin to feel any negative experience with it, something going on in the knee or other places, then you just go ahead and you ease off. You get the right dose. Sometimes I'll offer you things in further rounds that won't be as simplified as this first round. You can always come back to the things we do in the first round. Now, we're going to be creating an action for our tricep muscle. The tricep is the back of the arm area. So from the shoulder to the elbow. There's a long piece of it that pulls the elbow back. And there's a short piece of it that takes a bent elbow and makes it go straight. So we're going to be working both pieces of it using what's known as a kickback. Now, a kickback can have you balancing with your hand on a chair. We're going to do a kickback that's going to have us in standing position. So there's going to be a little bit more activation of our core. For this, we're going to want some kind of weight. Remember, if you don't have a hand weight, an easy replacement of that is some can out of your pantry there that feels like it has a little bit of heft. So I'm going to get in a position that's going to make me active as I do the kick back action. So this is the side that I'm holding the weight. I'm going to step that leg backward. I'm going to bend the other knee. And I can either keep the back leg straight or bend it. I'm going to pull this arm up and have the elbow at about the height of my shoulder. And then, keeping the arm still, I'm going to stretch back. And then I'm going to bend. And you can see that the upper arm stays level. And that's very tiresome. Your brain's going to think, yeah, we're doing that. No, we're not. We're pulling that elbow up, and we're stretching the arm back straight. Now, if you've chosen a weight that's significantly heavy, your body's going to know it. And your body's also going to notice that you're in this weird position. And that's tiresome, too. And that's fine. If you want to do this and you say, oh, you know, I'm so tired, I'd rather do it from a kneeling position. That's great. That's nice. You can have yourself on a bench, right? Or a chair. And it's all good. All right? But the position where we would have our body stationed like so is a good one because then everything's working. All right? So we got different levels of that. Now, when you've done 10 on one side, your back, your arm's going to go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And then if you're going to use the standing version of it, the side that's holding the weight, that leg steps back. The front knee bends, your elbow goes to that knee, and the back leg could remain straight or we bend it also. And we bring that elbow up, and then we stretch that arm back until it's straight. It's just like a relay race. We get the baton and we're passing it backward. And we don't just, you know, make it go quick. We don't swing it and then let it go forward. We hold it for just a moment because you're going to feel more action with that. And remember, if you're thinking, oh gosh, no, I don't want to stand up, for whatever reason, that's fine. Come down on the floor, into a tabletop. You see how from the shoulder to the elbow, it's not moving. It's from the elbow to the wrist. That's where the movement is reflecting the action. And if we're using anything to kneel on, be it a bench or be it a chair, there we go. So, back of the arm, tricep muscle. You know, using a weight that's too heavy can often thwart you. You won't be getting as much out of it as if you used a weight that was appropriate for your level. So sometimes you need to go down in weight in order to get the best workout. Now we've done that kickback, and I want us to work with our forearms and the muscles that control the hand. I'm going to be putting the hand down. I'm just bringing this right here so it's closer to view of the camera. But in a moment here, I'm going to be showing you my hand position, and I'm going to be lifting up the heel of the palm, but you can see that my fingers and actually the knuckle area of my hand is remaining down. Okay, so that's going to remain down. I'm going to be doing it with both hands at the same time, and so that's the part I'm going to be lifting up in case you can't see it once I'm back in position. So I'm going to be placing my hands down, and my arms are shoulder distance wide. Now, if I have all my weight backward and just push the fingertips and the knuckles down, my thumb comes up too, but the heel of the palm lifts up and comes back down. And this is not very hard. This is just part of my warm-up. It becomes more difficult when I do that exact action. And by the way, inside the elbows facing forward would make us turn out the arms, make it harder. So here's the easy version, heel of the palm lifting. But if I bring my body weight more forward so that I'm more angled over my hands, it's harder. And if I go even more forward, oh my goodness. So what we want to find is that exact forward position where we can do it. It's hard to do. And we'll start our count there. So, you know, if you're way back here and you're like, whee, okay, that's range of motion. Yeah, that's great, but that doesn't really count. So find something that's a little difficult. Both hands lift at the same time. That simultaneous movement, really important. So don't just do one and then the other. Do both at the same time. And what we're going to feel is that we did something for the forearm area. And a great thing to do right after you've done this is make soft fist and just make a swirly movement. Right? And you're like, oh my gosh, do I feel like my forearms have been worked? Yes, indeed, your forearms have been worked. You know what's really great? This is excellent for the wrist. It's excellent for finger kind of things. And so this is a really good thing to do for those reasons. All right, very good. Now, we're going to be at the floor for our next one, which is going to be working the core, the rectus abdominis part of the core. And it starts off in a sphinx position where we put the elbows under the shoulders. And so you want to make sure that your elbows have plenty of cushion. If your mat's not thick enough, maybe double a little section there, put something extra under it. And we'll be down. And so when I talk about the sphinx pose, I'm talking about supporting the weight of the shoulder right over that elbow, and the arms are either forward parallel, or they could be with the hands nicely crowded together. That works too. And we use this to pull us forward. Now I'm pushing the pubic bone area downward as I pull forward. I'm also making it wide between the shoulder blades. We're actually going to lift our chin a little bit, take a deep inhale, and then as we exhale, we look down, and we make a crunch. We bring the ribs toward the navel. And that's the floor version of this crunch. There is a version that I could do at the wall. Come over here to this wall space. And at the wall, if I didn't want to be down, for some reason, didn't want my elbows down, I could place my arms at the wall, pulling upward and leaning my hips a little toward the wall. I look up at the ceiling at first, taking a deep breath. And then as I'm ready to, looking forward, I exhale, bending the knees and rounding the back. And so the idea is that I'm making this nice little short front of my body, whether I'm at the floor or whether I'm at the wall. So here's the floor version again. Elbows are down, or if I was at the wall, elbows on the wall, palms nice and flat, pulling forward or upward, lifting the chin, inhaling, broad shoulders, and the exhale is looking down or at the wall, and the crunch, ribs toward navel. Bending those knees a little bit, just lifting the hips up ever so slightly. But just a little bit of a crunch. You don't even have to really lift the pelvis. If you could just crunch the ribs toward the navel. And that is the action, the feeling of activity in the rectus abdominis muscles. So keep doing that. Try for at least 10 of those. Let me get our signals already. So that we will know when we're done with things. The end of the round, and so here's the end of round 1. It's the little bitty goat bell. So now you know. All right. Did the goat work? And we're ready to begin our second round, which means we're ready to do more external rotation. Now I'm going to take us over to this wall region, and I'm going to show you the activity. There's a way to do it with or without a weight, okay? Now you could, by the way, you could be doing that seated work that we did in round 1, seated or standing, and you could have your arm just creating that external rotation using either block or ball. Remember that? Yeah, that's what we did with external rotation. But at the wall, first I'll do it without a weight, just standing. And I'm going to stand with my back to the wall. I'll just do one side. I'm going to bring my arm up a little below the shoulder. And the arm starts off with the forearm parallel to the floor. Now, chest up, shoulders down, head back at the wall, hips back at the wall. Here's the external rotation as I'm bringing the palm upward, and then I'm coming back down. Now, in neither direction am I going to get to the wall, okay? I'm trying to keep my arm nicely 90 degrees at the elbow. Now, that's the version that does not use a weight, and you might not want to use a weight because you may be saying, wow, I really feel that. If you wanted to use a weight, again, I would choose a small weight. It's actually a pretty heavy one. Coming up, and you start off here, and then you're just pulling, and then coming back. And what the wall does is it gives us support. You can see that my elbow is not absolutely as high as my shoulder. And you just really focus on making this okay. If you were using the weight and all of a sudden your arm got too tired with it, we'll just, put the weight aside and continue with some more repetitions with that. All right, you can go into the internal rotation. But your focus is that external rotation. When you've completed one arm, then you'll do the other side. So the arm is brought out and the elbow is not quite as high as the shoulder, and everything's parallel to begin with. Make sure your shoulders, your head, your hips are at the wall, shoulder blades pulling toward the hips. And then you've got the inward, which is that downward movement, and the outward. And the elbow shouldn't be sliding up and down the wall. It's really staying in one position, and we're trying to keep our elbow at about 90 degrees. All of this is rather difficult to figure out in that situation. And if you wanted to use the weight, then you start off like so, and then up we go, and down. And don't try and get completely to the wall. It's not necessary. You're just creating range of motion. Now, it is also quite possible to just say, no, that is not working with my arm. Then that action that we did when we were seated, or you can do it standing with a block or a ball, you can just say, okay, fine, I will rotate in and I will rotate out without resistance, with the arm not quite as high up. So we had a couple of different things changing in that scenario. So it's not the same as when we're seated. The arm really, having the arm right here versus having it right here is a huge difference. It's a lot of different muscle structure brought together. So having a little bit of a struggle with one version versus another is not unusual at all. But that's fine. Giving ourselves variety also is a great thing to do. Okay. So as we said in round 1, external rotation is the unusual thing of the upper body. But the lower body it tends to use an external rotated hip position. And the unusual thing, and the thing that's really not trained for, is the inward rotation. We're not going to walk around like this, but what we are going to do is we're going to come down and onto our side. And we will either need something like a ball or a pillow or a block. And we're going to create inward hip rotation. So either side, doesn't matter which one you start. We're going to do it all on one side, then we'll switch to the other side. So come down and make your neck comfortable. If you want your head pillowed on something, that's perfectly fine. I always just prop my head so I can still spy on you right now. I've got the knees over knees, ankles over ankles, so I know that my pelvis is not rotated or leaning backward or forward. And we're going to place the object, be it the ball or the pillow that's nice and soft, or the block that's nice and firm, in a position. And then the upper leg is our target leg, and we're going to make the inward rotation. So the foot comes up because we rotated the hip in, and then we bring it back down. Don't think of this as an action where I'm going to lift my foot and get this part of my leg active. No, I'm thinking, how do I turn my hip in? So really think of it as a hip turning in. And usually what's going to happen is right at the end of that movement, you're going to feel like you just can't go any further. Now your foot might only lift up to about level, or it might lift a lot higher than mine, because our ranges of motion are different person to person based on things like genetics, but a lot of it's based on what did we do for the first 25 years of our life when the hip was being developed. It takes a long time to go from the cartilage, that's all that the hip is when we are born, into this bony construct as we live with it the rest of our life. And so the things we do make the hip develop. And of course you feel that as it does that action. Now that is good. And when you're ready to, we're going to switch to the second side. So this, it doesn't require a weight. If you're going to use a weight in this, we might use an ankle weight or something like that. So if you're feeling that there's absolutely no benefit to you, no challenge whatsoever, you could use an ankle weight, or I don't know, a very tired cat, lay on your ankle there. And then we go to side two, and we get the device, whatever it is, the small ball, the block, or a pillow. You just put it in a way that it doesn't conflict. And then you create your inward hip rotation. Now, I feel different on one side versus the other. It's just what's typical. Our body's going to create a pattern of use. So, you know, we are used to thinking of ourselves as right or left-handed, but we're also right or left-hipped. So the body uses the sides differently and very independently, especially the lower body, which is then supporting all our body weight usually when we're doing things with it. Right now, obviously, we don't have the body weight on this, and so we're working on a range of motion. One of the things about creating inward rotation like this is it's actually beneficial to our knee. It's one of the reasons I say focus on rotating and not trying to make the movement below the level of the knee, because this is the action that's really going to give us the most benefit of the hip and take some of the pressure off of the knee, which is often substituted for movements that should be happening in the hip. Okay, very good. So we got that inward hip rotation. We're going to be working with our tricep muscle again. Now this is one of those actions where just getting into the posture is part of the challenge for us. So if I were thinking about this action that we did in the first round, we did the arm up and the kick back, which you could still do for this round. That is using the arm completely different from what I'm going to have us do, which is take the arm and bring it in line with the head. I'm going to be making a bend and a straightening like that, okay? So whatever weight you use, don't knock your goat bell off. Whatever weight you use, you're going to probably want a relatively light weight, and you could also use other things. So I'm going to show you with the weight first for those that want to use it. And I'm going to do it in a one arm at a time method. So the arm is up. This other arm is just right here, just trying to make sure that I don't collide things into my head or throw the arm or have the arm fall off the bend. And then we go straight. So we're just paying attention. This arm's just, just giving me some advice. Bending and straightening that elbow. So that would be desirable. Although I know that for many of us, the ability to raise the arm all the way up is rather a challenge. If you want to work on that challenge, you can take your block and just, bring it up and then create that bend, keeping the elbows close to the head. So bending and straightening like that. And that is going to teach you a lot about the range of motion that your arms are able to make. If you find it just impossible to bring the arm up and it's forward and it's pulling the shoulder, the best thing to do is to come down onto the floor and do, instead of having the arm right by the side, you could be straight upward,
I'm using both hands holding the weight because that's a little easier on the shoulder. Or I can angle a little bit like that, and I just got a little more control over things versus straight in the air. And you could do this instead of from a standing position, a seated position would be fine as well. Now, if you're getting close to the first side finishing, you can go to the other side. So remember, we can hold and use a one arm at a time activity. And there's what it looks like from the front. And this is what it looks like from the side. My arm is just being used to give me a chance to keep this arm in line without it moving around. It's not unusual for this kind of work to make us feel a little quaky. We could do work on our range of motion, both arms close to the head, just working on the bending and the straightening, just getting the shoulder ready to work the tricep like that. Or we could be on our back and do another round of the arms either straight up. Remember, most important when you're using a weight like this, you just don't hit your head with the weight. That's helpful. You can be a little bit more like that, just sort of working on that angle. And these are all really great. So, trust that if your body is having trouble or an issue with something, that there's a real reason for it, and we need to adapt around those particular problems that we might be having. Okay, well done. Now, I want to create an action where I'm going to be asking my hands to do the work again. So the first thing we did was the palm lift. I'm going to come closer to the camera here so that you can get a sense of what I'm asking you to do, and I'll be doing it on the floor. So in our first round, we were creating the action where we lifted up, and we did that in a way that kept the weight on the knuckle part of the hand. Now we're going to be in a position, and I'll have the forearms all the way down, but the thumbs are going to be close to the side of the hand, the palms are flat. We're going to pull the thumbs toward each other and then lift them up. Now, the most common thing to happen when we create this action, I'll just show it one thumb at a time, is that when you go to lift upward, your thumb will encroach back into the range of where that index finger line is. So we've got to keep it pulled toward the body and then lifting up while the rest of the hand stays down. Now, the position of the arm for this movement is going to have us with the forearm down. So we're controlling as much as we can about the posture. So I'm going to place my arms where they are shoulder distance wide at the elbow and shoulder distance wide at the wrist. I'm going to have the thumbs close to the index finger side, the palms and the wrist relatively flat. I pull my thumbs towards each other, toward my body. I lift them up away from the floor, and then I close it back down again. So it's the resistance internally that's going on. I'll show the side view. My hands might not have been doing that one. Okay, so my hands are down, palms are flat. I pull the thumbs toward each other. I lift up and I try and keep that action. And it may not be that we have a lot of range of motion. If you wanted to focus just on one hand at a time with this, just getting the hand active, thumb and then lift, that would be perfectly fine too. So you can position yourself where you're just working on one at a time, creating that action. There's going to be resistance, and we get really upset when we begin to feel the signs of aging in our thumb, because that's the most important finger. And we're grabbing things all the time, bending inward. And so this is asking us to use these muscle structures that have control. They're right in here. You'll see as you pull back, the tendons become visible. And when you lift up, you see this little tendon area right in this section. Those are the muscles found in here that are going to be used during this action. Really helpful. At first, you're going to have the least range of motion of your hand, but as you keep working with it, you're going to get better. Don't just do it to the point where you're just really traumatized and unhappy and then pleasant in the sensation in the hand. And we could do it if our hands were together like this and just pulling our thumbs away from each other too. So that's the not hand at the floor kind of action as well. Very good. Now we're going to be working with this rectus abdominis part of our core.
And I'll show it from the levels that are the least intense to the levels that are more intense for this. So I'm going to start at the wall with the least intense level, having the elbow at about the height of the shoulder, at about shoulder distance wide. I do keep the back of the shoulders nice and broad. And I use the forearms to pull the chest upward so that I can sway my hips toward the wall without jamming. I look up, take a deep breath. And then as I exhale, I look forward, bend my knees, and round my back, which crunches the front of the body. And I know you can't see, but the body's just like crunched like this. Ribs toward navel. The version at the floor is just identical to that, only our body posture is different. So we're coming forearms down, broad shoulders. We pull toward the fingers to stretch through the front. We lift the chin, deep breath in. And as we exhale, we look down, we press, we bring ribs toward navel, just a partial crunch. Now, for this round, if you want to go into a deeper crunch, you just come up on those knees a little bit. So you pull forward, and then you look down, you start that partial crunch, and then you just bring the hips up to about the height of the shoulders. You're still trying to round and flatten your back. So you're not thinking hips lift up. Don't think hips lift up, because that could happen, and your belly could be completely quiet. And so you pull forward, look down, make your crunch, and then try and turn the crunch into the thing that helps you lift up those hips a little higher. So you're thinking that you're tucking things toward the navel, ribs toward the navel, or tucking the pubic bone or tailbone in toward the navel underneath the body. And that is going to get you a pretty strong action. I always ask people, do you feel it in the abdominal area? And if they say, yes, I really do, then I know you've got it just right. But we can feel that from the wall version of this to the initial, just, slight crunch of the belly, all the way to lifting upward. And believe me, yeah, I know our shoulders are in on this too. We are feeling this in the shoulder region as well. So yeah, that's actually happening. So you're going to be feeling that, and it's something that's tiresome. You may not want to do all 10 in a row. You may want to pause for a little bit and do a few more. So do that final one. You're pulling forward, and then you're looking down. You start to crunch, and then you just crunch more. Hold it for just a moment, and then coming back down. And so that is going to get us nice, strong, active rectus abdominis part of our core. And it leads us to the finishing of round 2. The sheep bell, and allows us to move in to our 3rd round. And we've been working with external rotation in various means. We did the one where we had the ball or pillow or block, and we just, under our own influence, were creating the action. We had the one where we went over to the wall, either with or without the weight. We had that arm a little below the shoulder. We went down, and then we brought that arm up, and we were not touching the wall with the back of our wrist in either direction, just keeping ourselves nice and stable right there. This 3rd one can be done with or without a weight. And the weight that you use might seem too heavy, so you might start with the weight and then finish without the weight at all. But we'll be on our side doing our weight. Now, you can prop your head up, and I do recommend that you don't let the head just rest all the way flat, because that actually adds a benefit to this action. And we're going to do a little bit of a stretch action before we get started. So we're going to have knee over knee. And I've got the weight right here. I'm not using it exactly yet. I will soon, but I'm not using it exactly yet. I'm going to take my arm, and first I'm going to stretch it in the direction of my head and pull so that my chest area is stretching a bit. And then I'm going to reach and lift so my chest is coming upward a little bit. And then I'm going to reach in the direction of the hip, and I'm going to really stretch so that my shoulder is pulled away from the head, and then I pin the elbow, and my weight should be there. So I'm really reaching that elbow, and then I can grab hold of the weight or not, and I start to pull up and then coming down. Now, everyone's different about how high that forearm comes up. Some people point straight up to the ceiling, and other people, it's barely parallel. I see people sometimes, and I sometimes teach this in a fast fashion, meaning that the movement would be quick, but not right now. We're doing weight training, and that means that we're going a slow and sedate pace with our action. If as you're using the weight, your shoulder begins to fatigue, you can just simply put the weight down and continue on. in that slow fashion without the weight. And so we're going for 10 full repetitions. If during this I put the weight down and I feel like, well, I can do a few more with that weight, I can pick it back up again. And so it will create fatigue. And so use the weight or not. I know sometimes we don't have a lot of variety in the amount of weight, and even a small weight like this 4-pound weight can feel pretty heavy to that. And when done correctly with the head in a prop kind of position, it really creates a nice release between the neck and the shoulder and the upper trapezius area. And our target muscle, the external rotators, got worked too. And then when you're ready for your second side, you start off with that 3-part stretch. I know that I want that weight available by the time I get to the stretch, so I'll make sure that it's there. Good. But I start with taking my arm and reaching alongside the head and just pulling. I want to pull in a way that gets into that rib cage structure. And then I'm going to reach toward the sky. I'm going to lift and pull my chest upward a little bit. And then I'm going to reach and I'm going to pull so that that space between my shoulder and my neck is a little bit of a stretch. And then I'm going to bend the elbow, come grab my weight, put it just in the right place, and then up and down I go. Now one side could be completely different than the other. And I'm making this at a nice and slow and sedate pace, so it's not the kind of wave that I do 3 times in a row to fatigue as we do the yoga class. Completely different way of doing things. Looks the same to the observer, but is not the same to the person that's experiencing it. It's this nice slow method. It's very good. As I said, that weight got heavy for me, so I'm just going to put it down a few repetitions and just experience my arm moving nice and easy. And if I wanted to do a few more with the weight and truly tire myself out. And I'm not afraid of fatigue. Fatigue is actually the end game here. That's what we're looking for. We want to create an environment where our muscles get fatigued, stage-free fatigue, because fatigue is what stimulates the body's desire to make us stronger. And it puts us into a positive build, not just for the muscle structures. When we're exercising, we're creating a temporary state of inflammation. So the body has to learn how to reduce inflammation. So though initially we would say that we're overheated and more inflamed in the tissue areas, when we've just finished the exercise, the end result is that body-wide inflammation is reduced. Initially, our immune system is a little bit stressed from the exercise, but the follow-up, the response of the body to exercise is that it improves the immune system. So we're doing something that's going to be instilling our body into this build, positive, return, rejuvenate, versus just let it, sit idle and tear down. Now we've done the rotator cuff, and we want to work the hips and create that inward rotation. Now we've done the hips in several different angles. We started with a seated posture of the hip, which could have been a 90-degree angle of the knee, and we made our foot go out to the side like so. And then we were on our side, and we made our rotation like so. And that was probably about a 45-degree angle. Now we're going to take all the bend out of the hip. This works just fine with a ball, or if you don't have a little ball like that, it works just fine with a block, because we're going to be placing that object between the knee, whatever that object is, and we're going to be going face down. So I start in a kneeling position with that object, block or ball or pillow, there to keep my legs hip distance wide, and I'm going to come down face down. And once I'm face down, I'm going to bend my knees at about 90 degrees. Now I'm keeping my shoulders comfortable. I can have my head all the way down, and I push the front of the pelvis. That's important, to keep the pelvis pressed down, and then we let the legs widen apart. I call it the fishtail. So wide, and then we release. Now, your hips may only allow a very slight. We've taken all of the flexion, the bend, out of the hips, and that's something that this muscle structure is working against the muscle that controls the bend of the hip. And so here we are. We're just creating this fishtail over and over again, be it if you have a pillow or a ball or a block, it's just there as a spacer. We're not squeezing it. And the feet open out because the hip turned in. So I'm not thinking to pull my feet apart. I'm thinking turn my hips in and my feet happen to go apart. And I don't want my pelvis to hike up. I want to keep it pushed nice and flat so that the drama between the muscle structures, what turns the hip out and what turns the hip in, is nicely worked with. And this is a real good one for creating an environment where the hip is brought into a bit of stretch in an unusual way. So I wouldn't say that, that we would find it to be all that difficult as far as intensity, but you may find that your range of motion is very different from when you had your hip flexed, that your ability to inwardly rotate the hip is at its most minuscule amount when the pelvis is nice and flat, from the front of the hip is nice and flat. So just, make note of what's going on, and you may notice if you practice in this way that, that things get a little easier. Now, we're going to be targeting the back of the arm, the tricep muscle area. We've done this in several different ways. We held a weight and we did the tricep kickback. And so you could have yourself in a position with the elbow back and reaching like so, be it that you were here or kneeling at the floor or had your knee on a bench or a chair. And then we also had the, pretend this was a weight. We had the one where we had the arm up overhead, and there were the different versions of that. We did the overhead tricep. Okay. And that's great. But now we're going to be going for a little bit more of a posterior shape. So, when we did the kickback, the arm was lined up with the shoulder. Now I'm going to take the arm back even a little further than that. And so initially, just for a moment, as I'm sitting like this, I'm just going to pull both elbows and just see how far back. And not only how far back, but then I keep the elbows in. I don't want them flaring out to the side. I want them to stay relatively narrow. Now my feet are forward of me and my hands are going to be down here. And I'm just going to see how far back, fingers facing toward my toes, toward my body, that I can go. And I'm allowed to lean back, but I don't want those hands to be right next to the hips. That is not going to work for me. I'm going to have to just see how far back my hands can comfortably go. Now my elbows should be pulling toward the midline. I should be pulling shoulder blades toward hips, and right now the chin is sort of facing frontward. We're going to do a little bit of a floor dip. So we're going to bend the elbows, and we don't have to touch the floor. We just bend the elbows a little bit, and then we push until the elbows are straight. Now I get to decide how much backward effort I'm pushing. So I could be leaning back and pushing hard and making this very hard. Or if I needed some assistance getting back up again, I could use my abdominal muscles and my leg muscles to pull up, and it would be very easy. So we've got the version where we simply come back and we come forward. But that's not the only version of this. We have the version where we come back and we come forward, and then we lift our hips up into a reverse tabletop. Well, that's going to make at the very end, the arms feel like, oh my gosh, they just got hard. So down and up, and if you want the add-on, lift. But if you're thinking, gosh, no, I really want to fatigue more, then you go down, and before you lift up, you lift your hips, and then you straighten those elbows. Oh, you will know that you put more weight on those arms. So again, the 3 is the down and up. That's 1. The second one is down, up, lift. And the third one is down, lift. Ooh, yeah. And it's good to do them all, even in that same cycle of things, so that you're just, working to a satisfying amount of fatigue. And I know that one gets to the wrist. So if you were doing it and you were thinking, nope, what's the one that's most like this that will help me develop that skill? That would be the kickback. So if instead of doing this, you said, my wrist just won't handle that, your wrist might very well handle this action. And you could just lift the elbow up a little higher and start to work on that dip action kind of thing. And that wouldn't be as much trouble for your wrist. You could do it that way too. And that would build a satisfying level of fatigue. So the back of the arm is very tired of this. And, you know, obviously we don't reach our arms back as much as we reach our arms forward. So it's another part of the cross training cycle of things that we do. And that's great. Now, what we want to do is, trying to read my notes here. We're going to be creating a seated action with our hands. And so you can sit on anything, a chair, you can sit on the ground. I'm going to grab a physio ball just to lift me up a little higher so I can come a little closer to you. And you can see the action that I'm going to create. So in this one, we're going to have our palms together. Now we're going to start off, and again, you can be sitting on the floor, sitting on a chair, sitting on a physio ball. We're going to have our palms together. And so when I say palm, I'm talking about this part of the hand, all right? So everything that's not a finger, even from the wrist region and down to those knuckle regions. And the elbows are going to be close to the body. And I'm going to push the palms into each other and pull everything that's a finger and a thumb away from one another. And then we just bring it together and we pull it back. Now we're not pulling back so that the whole palm opens out. No, we're pulling back so the fingers pull back. And if I'm thinking about it, I would pull back so that my thumb is also moving in the direction of my body. And my fingers are widening apart. If you wanted to add sort of a surprise, you know, look to your face, it would really go with this, right? So, so we create this action over and over again. All right, and that begins to fatigue us out. But it's not the intensity level that I want us to finish with, because what I'm going to invite us to do, the arms have been forward of the body. I want to pull the hands in closer and spread the elbows out wider. So now those wrists are really close to my body. My palms are still pushing together. And then keeping the palm pressing, I want to pull the fingers back and oh my goodness. Oh my, we can tell that this is not necessarily something we do all the time. And that's good, because that makes it perfect cross training. And so maybe it's just ridiculous to get your fingers any bit apart. And if you needed to move the hands slightly outward to gain more, you could. But really, it's that feeling of resistance. It's found inside of us. We don't need any weight. We've got our own resistance in the typical muscle patterns that we've created. And this is a great repatterning. It is going to do wonderful things for the strength of our hand. It's going to pull away the overuse of the joint structures. And it is a great way, if you see, you know, if we see each other in real life, we can just, you know, do this. It's our secret club hand signal for each other. And there we go. And then the best thing to do is just to make small fists, soft fists, little swirls one way, little swirls the other way. If you want to take your hands and grip into the forearm area and just squeeze upward and toward the hand to just, you know, finish out that kind of action, because it can be very sensational in these forearm areas as we're working on this. But boy, I tell you, beautiful cross training, something that preserves the hands and make that hand, instead of being this curved in thing that's useless to us after a while, a hand that can open up flat again, a hand that's strong and all the muscle structures that support it, fingers that are not suffering from that uneven wear that's called osteoarthritis, and a hand that remains strong and vital. And so that's what we really want. And this leads us to what's very nice, the next action with our rectus abdominis. And so the idea is a rib cage. You know, here's the navel, rib cage. We move the rib cage toward navel. We create a little hunch. If we move the pubic bone of the rib cage, we create this really crowded. Oh, we're really crunching inward, and that's what we're trying to do with the action starting off in a position that really elongates us. It really stretches us from here to here. And so I'll remind you of all the actions that would be the final action for us today. And so we've got the forearm wall crunch. We pull upward as we stand. We let the hips sway. We look upward. We take a deep breath in, and then we look forward, bend our knees, and crunch through the front ribs toward navel and tuck under tailbone. It moves toward the navel too. And then we release out of that. So that is a very good action. We've got the floor version, a couple of them that we've studied so far. In the first of those, it's a relatively simple, just a bit of crunch. So we're down, arms shoulder distance wide, arms either spread out or hands closer together. We pull forward, keeping the back of the shoulders wide. We look upward, deep inhale. As we're looking down, exhaling, we just crunch the ribs toward the navel. We come only partially up.
Or we do all of that, pull forward, inhale, we look down, and we crunch, and we come up, and those hips rise up to about the height of the shoulders. We come down, or we take it further, we come up, and one leg and the other comes up, come back down, or we take it further. We crunch, we come up, and we go out, in, and then softly back down again. Oh yeah. So all of those, you could just, you could just say, well, I'll start crunch, and then I'll add crunch, lift, and then I'll go crunch, lift, lift, and then I'll go crunch, lift, lift, slippy, empty, back down again. And your body will be saying, what the heck are you doing to your rectus abdominis region? And you'll say, I'm training it because it's been sitting watching Netflix for too long. It really needs to get strong. You gotta have those conversations with your body because your body's not necessarily gonna know, why are you doing all this? For your own good. That's what you tell your body, it's for your own good. And for those who have requested to know when the end of round 3 could come, whenever you get done with those, or of course, if you're waiting for the cowbell. Right, so now we know 3 different farm animals as well. All right, so when you say, I've had a satisfying rectus abdominis action and I'm ready for my cool down, good job. We can start the cool down if you're, if you want to come to a standing position and just do the cool down, it's nice. I show this because sometimes, being down on the floor is what you want to do and you don't want to get up, but you might be standing. We could also spread the knees and reach across. I show these standing ones because I like us to know ways to release tension, but then eventually we do get down on that floor and onto our back. And, if you have a physio ball that you can place behind your knees, it's one of the reasons to get a physio ball is that you can place it behind your knees and rock slowly back and forth. That is awesome. And these things are really cheap and they don't seem to be one of the things that is very difficult to find around. There we go. But if you don't have the physio ball, you can spread your feet and your knees wide. And with that wideness, as you tilt from side to side, it's very soft on the back. It's not a strong engagement of anything. It helps to open up the front of the hip. It's this light little thing. Twists are great for restoring order in a body that's been working pretty hard. If you do want more sensation of twist, you can have those knees closer together so that when you rock side to side, they pull the back just a little bit more. But you could also, if you wanted more intensity, bring the feet up, because then the weight of the legs, which is about half your body weight, is pulling into your structure. Just make sure that what you're doing is very comfortable. If you felt some tightness in the back legs, you could hold in one leg at a time, straighten so that you're releasing a little bit of the hamstring region. So these are all really good activities to do. If you wanted to stretch the upper body, it's as simple as just taking the arms and just bringing them alongside the head is usually one of the better things, just to open up in that unusual way. That would help us gain a little bit more in that ability to do the overhead tricep work too, just to letting the arms get used to this position. And so you'll do those gentle stretches and activations and breathing, which is part of the warm down process. And then when you're ready to, you'll stretch. Remember that you're wanting to make a body that's going to work very well for you. So you want to follow through, and follow through would mean that you would also allow yourself the rest that you needed, so you're not intensely working all the time. And you would also want to be sure to get your sleep, your 7 to 10 hours, and you will want to eat your 30 grams of protein, which could be your 3 ounces of chicken, or perhaps you wanted 4 ounces of beef today, or maybe you wanted a cup of cottage cheese, or maybe you said, I will eat 5 eggs, because each egg only having 6 grams of protein would give you that. Or drink a lot of milk. I don't recommend, because only a cup of milk has only got 8 grams, but you can then say, I know that I want to eat 30 grams of protein of cheese, and that means that you're eating at least more than 4 ounces of cheese, because 1 ounce is anywhere from 4 to 9 grams. So you got to choose that, you know, higher protein cheese if you're going to go that route. But anyway, excellent work, everyone. How you feeling? Everybody doing okay?